Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to the luncheon event today at the Rumi Forum in Washington, D.C. I'm Tariq Shafi. Our special guest speaker today is the Ambassador of Pakistan to the U.S., His Excellency Mr. Husain Haqqani. And the title of his talk will be Pakistan and the U.S. Partners in Combating Terrorism. Now, I will go over the format of his talk. He will speak for about 20-25 minutes without interruptions. I will then use my moderator's prerogative to ask him a question or two, maybe a comment, based on what he has said, get his responses. We will then open the forum for a question and answer session. If you wish to ask him a question, please raise your hands. We will assign you numbers. Wait for the mic to come to you. Please stand up, state your name, your affiliation, and ask your question. Please refrain from giving us a speech. Ask a concise, brief question so we can get as many of your questions answered by the ambassador as time permits. So those are some of the ground rules. Now for the ambassador's biography. Needless to say, his resume is quite impressive. First and foremost, like me, he was born in Karachi, Pakistan. So that's a good start. He got his master's in international relations from the University of Karachi in 1980 and graduated with distinction. He became ambassador of Pakistan to the US last year, but started his career as a journalist, writing numerous articles on national and international politics published by Pakistan's leading newspapers. He has worked in Hong Kong as East Asian correspondent for the London-based Arabiya, the Islamic World Review, has held the position of Pakistan and Afghanistan correspondent for Far Eastern Economic Review, has contributed to Voice of America Radio covering the war in Afghanistan and militant jihadi groups, and has been published in numerous papers throughout the world, including the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Boston Globe, Financial Times, and many, many others. As a public servant, he has served as Special Assistant to the Pakistani Chief Minister Punjab, Special Assistant to Prime Minister Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi during the first Gulf War, and Special Assistant and Principal Spokesman to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, representing the Prime Minister in talks with the US government over imposition of sanctions in retaliation for Pakistan's nuclear program. In 1992, His Excellency became Pakistan's ambassador to Sri Lanka, among the youngest people to serve as Pakistan's ambassador abroad. From 93 to 95, he served with the rank of a Minister of State and Federal Secretary for Information and Broadcasting. Currently, he's also an associate professor for international relations at Boston University. Incidentally, I just talked a little bit about Sri Lanka, he being the ambassador there. Just the other day, Pakistan beat Sri Lanka in a Cricket World Cup tournament. So I thought I would slide that in. And on that happy note, for at least some of us, I will hand over the proceedings to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Pakistan, Mr. Husain Haqqani.
Thank you, Mr. Tariq Shafi. It's been a while that I have promised that I will come to the Rumi Forum. Those of us in Pakistan who have a knowledge of the growth of spirituality and knowledge in the Muslim world have a special recognition for Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi and his contribution to the development of spiritual thought in the Muslim world. And our own national poet, Iqbal, actually was inspired by Rumi, and there are many of his poems that talk about them. In fact, one of them says that I spend my days and my nights thinking about how to bring back the thought of Averroes, Razi, and the spirit of Rumi that once characterized the noble Islamic world. So before I talk about US-Pakistan relations, let me make some general comments about what I consider to be a crisis that actually transcends the nation states that constitute the broader Muslim world. From Morocco to Indonesia, the Muslims feel that they are in pain at one level because at one time For example, if in 1009 there were Nobel Prizes, they would have all been won by Muslims. The Muslims led the world in science and in military terms, in economic terms. And then, of course, now this generation, of which there is considerable representation in this audience, there has been a major problem, and that problem has been that the combined GDP of 57 Muslim majority countries in the world is less than the GDP of France. The intellectual output is even more worrying. 350 million people consider Arabic as their mother tongue, but fewer new titles of books are published every year in Arabic than are published in Finnish, which is the language of only 4 million people. Urdu, which is the language of Pakistan, Muslims in India, Muslims in Bangladesh, there are fewer new books published every year in Urdu than are published in Greek, which is the mother tongue of only 15, 16 million people. So despite their numbers, the world's Muslims are not the most productive in economic terms. Certainly in terms of their intellectual output, we are lagging behind. And consequently, because after all, military and economic muscle comes from a nation's ability to generate ideas and productivity, there is a feeling of being disempowered. Pakistan was the result of the feeling of Muslims in South Asia at the end of British rule there, that we would be better off by having a country of our own. And Pakistan has tremendous accomplishments, and while I'm one of those who celebrate, along with my fellow Pakistanis, the success in the cricket tournament, succeeding in cricket is not the only one. There are many other things in which Pakistan has accomplished quite a lot. But at the same time, Pakistan remains a nation that is adversely affected by trends that are now universal. There are very few countries in the Muslim world that have managed to avoid them. A trend towards extremist thought, a trend towards intolerance, a trend towards a desire to use nihilist and extremist ideologies as a means of bringing back lost glory. So you have people who say we should take greater pride in being able to die gloriously than to live without glory. And that whole thought pattern does not contribute to advancement. And what we have in Pakistan today is an attempt to change that trend. Pakistan's 62-year-old history has been characterized by the absence of a consistent pattern of democracy. We have had 4 military coups. Our military interventions have not necessarily given us long-term stability. Now Pakistan is on the verge of what I call the 3 critical transformations. Pakistan is in the process of transforming from an authoritarian culture to a democratic culture. There is consensus in Pakistan that notwithstanding the result of democracy, whether the people we elect are good or bad in the eyes of some people, whether they are perfect or imperfect, whether they are able to succeed or not succeed in certain, democracy is the way forward. Second, Pakistan is in the process of transforming from a overall culture in which militancy and militarism defined our national identity. We were great because we had a strong military. We were great because we had all these people who could actually exercise influence in the region on the strength of their militancy. And now there is a realization that that challenges the authority and the success of the Pakistani state. It weakens it, not strengthens it. So we need a nation that is economically strong, that is politically strong, that has the ability to put all our school-going age children into school. If you look at the statistics for South Asia, you will find that 92% of the children between the age of 5 and 15 go to school in India. 96% of them go to school in Bangladesh. 98% go to school in Sri Lanka. Only 58% of the school-going age children in Pakistan go to school. So obviously, if Pakistan is to be a nation which can have some hope of success, we have to make sure that the 42% who do not go to school get into school. And not only that, we have to make sure that what they study does not make them into intolerant bigots, but makes them valuable citizens of the modern world in which they are able to contribute. Out of that we will get our national pride. Out of that we will also also be able to have a greater success in being the natural leaders of the Muslim world that many Pakistanis feel they can be and should be. US-Pakistan relations during the 62-year period have waxed and waned. There have been times when Pakistan has been the most allied ally of the United States, but then there have also been times when Pakistan has been the most sanctioned ally of the United States. It has been the target of many sanctions. Pakistan and the US have disagreed about Pakistan's view of India. They have disagreed about Pakistan's conduct within the country, and they have disagreed most of all about Pakistan's nuclear weapons program in the past. Now, the US and Pakistan are in the process of building a longer-term partnership. A longer-term partnership based on both countries being democracies. In the past, US-Pakistan relations, if you see the trajectory, US-Pakistan partnership has always been close during the period of military rule in Pakistan. The consequence of that was that it ended up becoming a relationship between two institutions, the US military and the Pakistani military. It was never a relationship between the Pakistani nation and the US people. Now, in the democratic phase in Pakistan, the United States is committed to strengthening Pakistan's democracy and in the process developing a longer-term partnership. Senators John Kerry and Richard Lugar have presented something called the Kerry-Lugar Bill, or an enhanced partnership with Pakistan legislation. And the idea is to commit the United States to supporting the evolution of Pakistan as a democracy, as a modern state, with $1.5 billion in annual assistance that will go for education, for healthcare, for infrastructure building. Once the US is able to invest in our people will also feel more secure in being able to work together with the United States. And the threat of terrorism, let me be very honest about the threat of terrorism in our region. It did not come out of the blue. It is the result of many past policies, both of the United States and of Pakistan. During the Cold War, the United States thought that it was a convenient means of fighting communism if we could create pockets of hard line views on religion that could then serve as a barrier between the communist takeover of the Muslim world and US ascendancy. In the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan, the US helped train what were then known as the Mujahideen. That's a term that's no longer used in the media anymore. But I remember that when Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, the leader of the Afghan Mujahideen, came to the White House, President Ronald Reagan described him as the moral equivalent of George Washington. And of course, it was only a matter of time. So you cannot, when you are doing long-term thinking, you look beyond the immediate. These people, when they were slitting the throats of Soviet officers, nobody thought that that was a bad thing. Once they turned on and said, okay, now we've defeated the Soviet Union, now we're going to defeat the other superpower, of course now they are now all seen as terrorists. But the country that has paid a great price because of this has been Pakistan. Our growth has suffered. Our education has suffered. The militants have made our society into a battleground. We have ended up with sectarian conflict within our society. We have ended up with large numbers of people who are tearing each other apart. And so the Pakistani leadership, the democratically elected leadership, has now built a national consensus around the idea that we need to fight terrorism not because Uncle Sam wants it, but because we need to do it for the sake of our own people. Pakistan needs to fight terrorism and eliminate militancy so that we can be a nation that progresses in the modern context while retaining our Islamic identity, while retaining our traditions. It is for our people. It doesn't matter what people wear on their heads, whether some of our women want to wear their headscarves or take the chadar or take dupatta. What matters is what is inside people's heads. And we do not want people to have bigotry or prejudice or hopes of violence or desire to destroy anybody in that head. So that is the transformation from the culture of militancy and militarism to a culture of entrepreneurship and modernity. And the third transformation Pakistan needs to accomplish is a transformation from being at the crossroads of conflict to a crossroads of opportunity. Pakistan, if you think of it and you see the map, you will notice Pakistan is the country where Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East all meet. Our neighbor on one side is India, the leading country in South Asia. On the other side, we have Iran and the Gulf countries, which are all part of the Middle East. And then we have Afghanistan and Central Asia, the Strands of Central Asia, that are all opening up and coming into the modern era after the occupation of the Soviet Union ended. So Pakistan can either be at the center of the conflicts of all regions, or it can look upon itself as the nation that is going to sit at the center of the opportunities of all nations. It can be the country through which gas pipelines will go from Iran to South Asia, from Central Asia to South Asia. Trade will pass through, and that will raise the prosperity of our people. So the vision of the Pakistani leadership is these three transformations: transformation to democracy, transformation to a culture of entrepreneurship and modernity instead of militancy, and a transformation from being at the crossroads of conflicts to a crossroads of opportunity. To accomplish all of that, Pakistan is hoping to forge a longer-term partnership with the United States, not a transactional relationship. It is not a relationship in which we will get some aid and we will change our policies to be able to qualify for that aid. What we are looking at is a longer-term partnership as two democracies that will strengthen Southern Asia, make sure that Afghanistan becomes stable. It is in our national interest, in Pakistan's national interest, to ensure that Afghanistan becomes stable so that foreign forces leave Afghanistan and Afghanistan can attain full independence in the sense of having its own working institution, an Afghan National Army, Afghan National Police, and no foreign troops present there, so that there is stability without the presence of large numbers of foreign soldiers as an irritant for anybody. Second, Pakistan would like to move forward and, with American assistance and help, ensure that Pakistan's long-standing difficulties and conflicts with India are resolved. And the United States will be a source not only of economic support and military support, but also of political and diplomatic support to ensure that we move forward with India, instead of being in a logjam in which both India and Pakistan are unable to move forward because of their dispute, especially the dispute over Jammu and Kashmir. The third thing we are looking forward to with the United States is to rebuild our institutions. The United States has accomplished a great deal in the last 200 years. It's a nation that has the strongest educational infrastructure. Many of you are studying in American universities, so you know that you didn't try to get into the universities of, say, for example, countries where educational standards are not particularly high. If you leave your country to go somewhere, you want to go to a country where the education standards are higher. And the US does have very high education standards. So we are looking forward to American investment and partnership in our education and building the building blocks. Pakistan has the potential to be the model, modern Muslim democracy. A country with a relatively short history of 62 years, but tremendous advantage of cultural, historic, and religious tradition. Pakistanis have had a linkage with the entire Muslim world. Very few people are aware, but the independence of Pakistan in 1947 was the catalyst for independence struggles in Algeria and Tunisia and Somalia. Pakistan played a role in negotiating the independence of many Muslim countries. Pakistan was a significant player in ensuring that Indonesia got its independence in 1949 from the Dutch. Pakistan has always been concerned, and now it is a time that everybody else can reciprocate by being concerned about Pakistan and ensuring that Pakistan can attain prosperity, security, and elimination of extremism and terrorism. How do we plan to fight terrorism in Pakistan? Well, the word fight always brings to mind the military component, but that's only one component. Pakistan intends to have a multi-dimensional approach. First, of course, there are people who are an immediate military threat. We will deal with them militarily, and we are doing that. We have had tremendous success in the Swat Valley, in the Malakand region. We will have to conduct some military operations in Waziristan, make sure that those who are irreconcilable completely and who know no other language except the language of weapons, and whose intentions are negative towards the state and nation of Pakistan, and who are perpetrators of violence and are hardcore extremists and terrorists, that they are fought. Second, we want to be able to start a political process whereby those who are not hardcore terrorists but have become swept up in a movement that is seen by many as supporters of militancy, that they can actually become part of Pakistan's political process. Pakistan's political process is open. We have many religious-based political parties that have been contesting elections for many years. As long as they go to the people, ask for votes, are part of the political process, they are welcome to join. The third is the economic transformation. We want to make sure that the areas that have been affected most by terrorism and militancy, that there is hope. People with hope do not become suicide bombers. It's only people who have lost all hope, whether they have lost hope in a political sense, economic sense, social sense, or ideological sense. They are the ones who think that death is preferable to life, because usually people want their ideology to succeed in their life. And so whatever their views, we want to give economic hope to our people, revive the economy, ensure people have. The fourth is education. We really hope that we can change the way people study, that we can bring all those who do not have any education into education. And there's an educational revolution that enables people to transcend the discourse of conspiracy theory and victimhood that plagues us, where people think everything wrong in our country is the result of injustices and conspiracies conducted by the more powerful nations. Well, even if there are things that are being done by major powers that run contrary to our interests, we still need to wake up. We still need to understand that unless and until we take leadership in generating wealth, in generating ideas, we will not be able to rise as nations. So that is the plan that the current government has. We have military operations ongoing. We have a major economic plan that is unfolding as we speak. The educational revolution, which we hope will materialize in the years to come. And by doing that, we hope that the large numbers of radicals and militants will end up either being defeated militarily or laying down their arms and becoming useful citizens of Pakistan. And doing all of that, the United States and Pakistan need to work together. The United States cannot win the war against terrorism without the active support of Pakistan. But Pakistan cannot defeat terrorists without the help and support of the United States either. So this is a relationship in which we have to look upon each other as partners, and the United States has to be mindful of Pakistan's concerns about its sovereignty, Pakistan's concerns about its security. No one in Washington can turn around and tell people in Islamabad, do not consider so and so you're a threat. If they feel that it's a threat, then the Americans need to understand why it is seen as a threat by Pakistanis. On the other hand, Pakistanis also need to go beyond just blaming the United States for the past and the past periods of waxing and waning, and make sure that this time, as true democracies, we build a relationship that will ensure the success of the United States in defeating terrorism and the success of Pakistan as a modern Muslim democratic state that stands on its own 2 feet. Pakistan does not wish to be dependent on the United States, but wants to be a friend, a partner, just as some other countries have historically evolved in that direction. Turkey being one example of a country that has been an American partner for many, many years, has had differences at times, but at the same time remains engaged both in the security as well as in the economic sphere. So I'm going to stop here. I think I've given enough food for thought for people who are already hungry to have to pose some questions, and I'm sure that will enable us to move forward.
Well, I'm sure your positive perspective has or will generate some questions. With all the doom and gloomy news that comes out of Pakistan on a daily basis and gets reported in worldwide media, I think it's a good thing to hear the other side of the progress, the positive elements of the fight against terrorism, a scourge that affects us all, directly or indirectly. Mr. Ambassador, when I first saw the headline of your talk, I visualized the word partners in quotes. Some of the points you have alluded to already, but the reason I thought that was that over the past several decades, the Pakistani governments have accused the US governments of being an inconsistent ally, like you've said, incomplete to say the least, often duplicitous. And on the other side, the US governments have accused the civilian governments of Pakistan, the military rulers, of being inept, corrupt, and take your negative adjectives, and they've said that you have wasted billions upon billions of US taxpayer dollars and have nothing to show for it, nothing you've done for infrastructure or terrorism, against terrorism. So I'm wondering why you feel that this time this partnership would be more of on an equal footing and would be more enduring and not just merely a strategic interest, which is just temporary.
First of all, let me just begin by saying that you started your comment by news of doom and gloom. The problem is that in an era of 24/7 news, we do not make a distinction between sort of passing news headline and the real sort of facts that represent a process. So there are events that sometimes are interpreted as the main thing. I mean, for example, you wake up, you shave, you get dressed, you go to your office. Those are all events. If they were being reported, Tariq Shafi leaves his home for office. That's a news item maybe, but that's not really the substance of what your life is about. So the substance of the life of Pakistan is not the day-to-day. For example, no newspaper says out of 160 million people today, 159,987,888 people remain peaceful and had a good normal life. It's always 14 people killed in a terrorist incident. So if you think about it, it's a very interesting way of approaching the news. That somehow we are unable to see the big picture, the wood for the trees. We can make that mistake. So that's very important to understand. Even in case of the US and Pakistan, look, the US and Pakistan have together accomplished a great deal as well. I mean, the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan was won because we were partners and we were together. Pakistan's ability to defend itself against, in the 3 or 4 wars that it has fought, that was always made possible with American military equipment. I mean, Pakistan's Air Force in 1965 could not have performed the way it did in the war if it did not have superior quality planes that had been provided by the United States. So look upon it as a bad marriage in which the husband is always complaining about, and by the way, day before yesterday, you put more salt in the food, and the wife turns around and says, and yes, of course, you forgot my birthday and didn't bring flowers. It's a complaining cult. But deep down, the fact remains that there has been no divorce, and neither has packed up their bags and left. And so obviously there is something positive here too. I think that the US and Pakistan both recognize the positive. Have there been many reasons for each to complain? Absolutely. Have we sometimes put more salt into the food than our partner could handle? Possibly. Have they occasionally been a little insensitive and walked away without thanking us for certain things? Definitely. And have we both had situations in which the other side has been displeased? Definitely. But at the same time, I think both sides do recognize the value of engagement. What has changed is the nature of the relationship. In the past, first of all, under civilian governments, throughout the 90s, Pakistan was under sanctions. So the relationship was not substantial. It was more diplomatic and symbolic rather than substantive. Before that, the 4 periods of great engagement of the US and Pakistan have all been under military rule. And under military rule, there was always a preference for securing military equipment and to develop a transactional relationship. So even under General Musharraf, the idea was after 9/11, you give us this, 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 and in return we will do this, this, this. It was never the notion of partnership. The word partnership is a new term in case of US and Pakistan. It was always alliance. And alliance was always transactional. So in the 1950s, Pakistan needed military equipment to defend itself against India. The US needed an ally against the Soviet Union and against communism. And that's how it was. Now it is not a transactional relationship. Both countries now look upon it as a partnership in which we will try and develop. And again, it's a work in progress. It will have there will still be many complaints about breakfast and lunch and salt and pepper and, not enough flowers and stuff like that. That will happen. But both realize that there is no walking away. So if you think about it, this is the first time that a military government has ended, a civilian government has started, and yet the flow of aid continues. There is ongoing negotiations about increasing Pakistan's market access to US markets. There is ongoing discourse about engagement on a longer term and sustained basis. And that is where the qualitative difference is.
Okay, well, I could go on, but I think I would like to give the audience a chance to respond. One, two. All right, get the mic and then please stand up and state your name and affiliation.
My name is Ahmed Shakil Mia. I write for the Bean and Urdu Times. Your Excellency, I'm happy that there's no divorce so far, but I'm afraid that the Americans are flirting with another partner in the area, which is a major concern for Pakistanis. My question is that although I do not have any access to classified information, but as a researcher and as a journalist, I know that there are at least 30 groups in Pakistan who are called Taliban. The real Taliban, according to my information, are less than 20%. The rest of them, they are criminal elements and foreigners. Some of them are bidding for others, for instance, the agents of India, Afghanistan, and even it is said that some of them are.
Just get to your question, please, if you don't mind.
I think it's a question. It may be a little long.
No, let's make it short.
Okay, and some of them, they are bidding for the U.S. And one prime example of that is that Baitullah Masood, the intelligence was given to the U.S. drones more than once. That's where the Baitullah Masood is, but they never fired a missile on Baitullah Masood. Instead, they just fired all the missiles on innocent Pakistanis. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I still haven't discerned the question, but I guess the question essentially is that it's based on what I would describe as a perennial complaint within Pakistan of certain people, which is one of not having faith on the United States and its security objectives in the region. We must first of all, as far as the war against various elements, militants and terrorists in Pakistan is concerned, the government of Pakistan judges them by their actions. So whether there are 30 groups or 35 or whether there are 39, we will just judge them by the actions of each group. The groups that are engaged in actions that can be described as terrorist will be obviously taken on. The others are all obviously groups with which the government remains open to various kinds of solutions. So that is the answer to the first part of your question. As far as involvement of various groups is concerned, in all insurgencies there are always facts, allegations, suspicions. External involvement is always suspected because that is always the first fear that people have. For example, if during the Cold War whenever there was a problem within the United States, the FBI always wondered whether the guys who were making the trouble here had any connection with the Soviet Union, for example. So it's always natural and understandable, and we hope that as Pakistan moves forward into normalizing relations with Afghanistan and improving relations with India, we will be able to have less suspicion on that count than we already do. And to be fair, the allegations that our neighbors make about us will also start subsiding, because after all, they also make allegations about us. As far as the American role is concerned, it is something that the US and the Pakistani government hear about. We remain in touch with each other about it. If there had been any substantive allegations so far by us about our American partners, the American partners would have heard about it. So, Mia Sahib, it is something that will remain around. As far as Baitullah Mahsood is concerned, he is a threat to Pakistani security. Pakistan's security forces are quite capable of dealing with threats that are directed at and aimed at Pakistan's national security, and we will deal with Mr. Mahsood and anybody else who threatens Pakistani security from within Pakistani territory.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Anne? Mike.
Hi, my name is Ann Rutherford. My name is Ann Rutherford, and I'm just a concerned citizen. I'm here today, and I've been studying or trying to study what is it about Islam and Muslim countries. You said that Pakistan is a Muslim country. I was wondering how you treat your minorities, if there are any, and generally how the Muslim world treats its minorities, and do you exact payment from your minorities who are not Muslim?
Pakistan certainly does not exact jizya from its non-Muslim minorities. We are signatories to the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Our treatment of minorities may not at times be perfect, but our constitution assures them of full respect and dignity as equal citizens. Our legislative institutions have representatives of religious minorities in particular fully represented. In fact, we have special quotas that ensure that they have representation if they cannot get elected in the normal course of events. So that said, there are always occasions when some members of our society do not treat their fellow citizens belonging to religious minorities with the respect and the constitutional protections that they deserve, and the government is working on creating institutions and mechanisms whereby we can ensure that all our religious minorities are protected, and not only religious minorities but our women, our children, and their rights are also protected in accordance with the constitution. So to summarize, our constitution assures and ensures protections which are not always in reality fully carried out, and we are working towards ensuring that the guarantees that our law and our constitution provides can also be provided in reality and in substance on ground.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Josh Hilbrand. I'm interning with Hands Along the Nile Development Services in Arlington, right across the river. My question has to do with the ISI, the Inter-Services Intelligence Agency.
Gosh, I was hoping nobody would come to that.
Of course. And it, from what I understand, it has a history of having an element inside of it that promotes, I guess, extremist movements, both in Afghanistan and in Kashmir, Jammu. And I was wondering if the situation has changed, as you say, what is exactly the proof that the ISI is still or is not still planning to promote these groups?
Right.
First of all, let me just say that the Pakistani Inter-Services Intelligence is a national security strategic intelligence agency like that of any other country. And as has been the case with many international and national security agencies, they come up with plans, they execute those plans, and sometimes the consequence of those plans are consequences that were not intended. So there was a time, I always remind people that there was a time the United States CIA used to think that it will send exploding cigars to Fidel Castro and that will somehow make America safe. Similarly, there was a time when the ISI, and at that time the CIA and the ISI were collaborators, they thought that creating a whole force of religiously imbued mujahideen who will go and fight the communists in Afghanistan was a good idea. So the ISI got involved in that forward operation. The CIA backed out after 1988. Once the Soviets left, the CIA left. Was not involved directly to the same level. Then, of course, there were developments in our region that affected our lives, and so therefore the ISI was involved. It wasn't a rogue operation. It was what Pakistan's security was perceived to be served by. After 9/11, the ISI has come under a lot of attention, and that is partly because Pakistan had a policy of not talking too much publicly about its intelligence operations. So because we didn't talk, our version didn't come out, and the others always kept heaping stuff on us. I think now Pakistan has a democratic government that has ensured that, for example, the head of the ISI came before Parliament and explained his organization in a secret session. The civilian authority fully controls the operations of our military and our intelligence services, and gradually we will develop the transparency which will ensure that the world stops suspecting the ISI of being some rogue organization. Will the ISI always conform to what, say, for example, the New York Times or the Washington Post wants it to do? No. But then neither will the CIA. No intelligence organization will ever conform to standards of sort of people working in think tanks and intellectuals and newspaper reporters, etc. It will, at the same time, be an organization that will work in accordance with Pakistan's national security objectives as defined by Pakistan's parliament and elected leaders, and there will be greater transparency. I think the era that you refer to is an era in which General Musharraf controlled the government of Pakistan, and he had a certain view of how Pakistan should operate at different layers and levels. We are trying to change that. We are ensuring that the only armed groups in Pakistan are those that work within the firm control of the state of Pakistan. It is not in Pakistan's interest to have large trained militias that are private, whatever their cause, whether the cause is Afghanistan, whether the cause is some other cause in the region. The point is that these large private non-state militias have not served Pakistan well, and the stated objective of the state of Pakistan now is to ensure that none of these groups remains in business. And I think that the ISI will help attain that objective, but it will not happen overnight.
Mr. Ambassador, before you go to the next member of the audience, can you couple that with the safety of nuclear weapons vis-a-vis ICI and those elements? Can you just bring that together?
I think that the security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons, I often jokingly say to my journalist friend that it's a journalist's question. You know, it's like you know, there are questions that you can describe as mother-in-law questions. Every time the mother-in-law will meet you, she will ask you a few questions that are, you can, irrespective of nationality, culture, identity, there are mother-in-law questions that mother-in-law will always ask the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law. Similarly, there are journalists' questions. You know, are Pakistan's nuclear weapons safe? With due respect, if they were unsafe, you would have heard about them. It's just that because Pakistan has nuclear weapons, people talk about them. The truth is, Pakistan's nuclear weapons program is subject to a command and control system. The security is ensured. It is international standards of security that we fulfill. And President Obama acknowledged that in an interview this weekend. He publicly said the US knows about it. Because very frankly, if they had not been secure, the US government would have done something about it by now. Now, does that mean that Pakistan will accept limitations and restrictions on our nuclear weapons capability that are that some people want to impose? My answer to that is no. And the reason for that is very simple. Pakistan acquired nuclear weapons capability because of certain realities in our region. And because of those realities in our region, we have developed a certain nuclear capability that is meant to serve as a minimum deterrent to safeguard Pakistan. And so, are our nuclear weapons safe by international standards? Absolutely. Will we at any point submit ourselves to some kinds of international limits and safeguards that go beyond just ensuring the security of the program? Only if it comes with a package that ensures our national security. Period.
By the way, I love my mother-in-law. The next question.
Always say that on the record.
It's being taped. Yeah.
Mr. Ambassador, my question is regarding the war on terror that you're a partner with on the United States.
Would you mind identifying yourself
Yeah,
first,
please.
please?
Hi, my name is Omar Malik. My question is regarding the war on terror. United States defense establishment likes to lump all terrorists together. United States was attacked by secular Arabs educated in the West. Pakistan is attacked by militants funded from outside Pakistan, whether it's drug money or otherwise. India was attacked by people who don't like its policies in Kashmir. So if the goal is defined incorrectly, how can you be a partner in achieving any results?
I
you,
think
thank you.
that I very clearly answered that question even earlier before it was asked, and that is, we can only identify people by their actions. And so, irrespective of what their objectives are, our objective is clear. Our objective is to ensure that anybody who attacks innocent civilians for whatever their cause, they are terrorists. And terrorists need to be eliminated, because that's what the United Nations has agreed upon. It has nothing to do with the United States and Pakistan alone. The United States has agreed, and so whether Sri Lanka fights its terrorists whose objectives are totally unconnected with the Muslim world or Islam or religion or anything, they were secular terrorists. The world supported the Sri Lankan government in eliminating and fighting the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam because of the methods the LTTE used. If the LTTE had been a political movement that said, this is our objective, we want people to vote for it, etc., nobody would have objected. But these people used to blow up people, they used to target civilians, they used to blow up hotels, they used to set off bombs at schools and buses, etc., etc. And given that, they were described as terrorists. Similarly, any of the people that you list, whatever, whether you describe them as secular or whatever, the fact of the matter is that terrorism has to be defined by the consequence of the actions of terrorists rather than by the causes of terrorists.
Please stand.
My name is Leila Zarki from the UN and Georgetown University as well. My question is, there are some elements within, there are serious allegations that there are some elements within the intelligence, Pakistani intelligence apparatus that support terrorism. I just want to have your opinion on that and what is being done to resolve that.
Well, I think that you hear such allegations every now and then they subside. I think it has to do with who supports terrorism is a verifiable fact sometimes. It's and so as long as we know who the individuals are, irrespective of where and whom they work for, Pakistan is taking action, and Pakistan's conduct in identifying elements within our society and in our country who have in any way worked with terrorists or pursued terrorist objectives, I think our conduct is becoming more and more clear as time goes by. So whether these people are current or former intelligence officials, etc., is something you will always hear. There is always a propaganda war going on as well, especially countries that are in conflict with certain other countries. There will always be some people who will say, you know what, terrorism in Pakistan is being supported by our neighboring countries, the two countries with whom Pakistan has conflict. And I'm sure there are people in this audience who will say, yes, absolutely, that's the case. And then there are others who will say Pakistan is supporting terrorism in those countries. So these are political allegations. As far as the actual facts are concerned, I think that if any evidence is presented to us about any individual within Pakistan and it is said that they are involved in supporting, aiding and abetting terrorists, we will take action against them, and that's what we have been doing lately.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Werner Hein. Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned the education situation, and I guess we all agree rather low level, 55% of young people go to school. What are the concrete steps you are going to undertake to improve that? I would say the fact that young people are the source of often of so-called terrorists should certainly make you take actions as much as possible.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, Pakistan's long-term goal remains that we want to ensure that in all our provinces primary education becomes compulsory, but you can't make something compulsory until and unless you provide access to everyone to have it. So as long as we can have the resources to build the schools that we need to ensure that all our school going age can enroll in schools, we cannot make education, primary education, compulsory for our population. So the plan is to ensure that the resources flow, that we can provide the schools, that we can provide the trained teachers, and a massive investment program is currently underway, including international assistance. The funding that will come under the Kerry Lugar program will help us build a large network of schools for our people. And at the same time, we are planning to build a teachers training university so that there can be trained teachers that can help educate the population. But the lag that we have from the past will not be covered in a short period of time. What we can do is the children between age 5 and 15 now, as soon as we start building enough schools and having enough teachers, then we will be able to bring them into the loop. But there will still be some people who will have already outgrown their age group and will have been left without education, and that is a price we as a nation will have to bear for our past, the mistakes of our past rulers. But for the future, our intention is to bring all school-going age children into school.
We have just one last question.
Minha Hussaini, National Muslim American Coordinator for the Obama campaign. Could you please comment on the 2.5 million refugees? I mean, the IDP camp situation is deplorable there, and what is the security situation for those folks?
Well, two things. First of all, I think that the affectees of terrorism that have moved out of their homes in Malakand division, we have been able to do two things for them. We have ensured that they have all been able to get some shelter, and they have all been catered for in terms of their basic necessities, in terms of food and healthcare. The UN estimates that, and there's been no major outbreak of epidemic there, so that's a positive. The UN estimates that some $700 million are needed for the relief phase, and the government of Pakistan is currently raising funds for the rehabilitation and reconstruction phase, which is estimated to be another cost of $2 billion. Look, it's never a convenient and a comfortable situation for people to be displaced and dislocated. But in terms of after the initial shock in which there was a little state of unpreparedness, I think the United Nations, Pakistani non-governmental organizations, the international community has mobilized effectively, and we have been able to, shall we say, meet the bare minimum standards for being able to provide for these people. We are told that as security becomes as security is ensured in several parts of the affected areas, these people will be encouraged to and provided for to return to their homes, because that is also an important element that these people, and they are very connected to their to their homes, so they need to be able to go back to their villages and towns. And the rehabilitation phase starts within the next few days, when some of these people start returning home, so that they have return kits whereby they can actually provide for their people. They have, for example, if they are farmers, they have seeds so that they can start cultivating again. They have materials with which they can rehabilitate their homes to some extent. In some areas, we will have to do a total reconstruction effort, just like we did immediately after the earthquake. And the government is looking at right now raising international support and international awareness for that.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for that keen insight and your perspective. I will now ask Dr. Ali.